What is going on, all you Faceoff fanatics, and welcome back to the Faceoff Zone podcast, a podcast dedicated solely to the Faceoff position. I'm your host, John Bodner, and I'll be breaking down and covering all the major Faceoff storylines of this upcoming NCAA lacrosse season. On this episode, I'm previewing and breaking down the NEC Conference. I've also got a very special guest joining me and helping me break it down. Two-time PLL champion, one of the best face-off guys in the world, Joe Nardella. So I'm very excited to hear his thoughts on some of these face-off guys in the NEC Conference that he's worked with personally. So stay tuned. It's going to be a lot of fun. If you haven't already, please check out the Faceoff Zone YouTube channel where you can see all the upcoming full-game face-off highlights I plan on showing this season. So let's get this thing going again, and let's dive deep into the zone. All right, so we're back at it here. I'm extremely fired up to announce my next guest. He's a two-time PLL champion for the Whipsnakes, PLL All-Star. Certainly, he's making a name for himself in the NLL right now at the top of all the face-off charts. He's the owner of Faceoff Factory. You know, when he's not playing, he's coaching face-off guys all over the country, especially in the New England area. And that's Joe Nardella. Joe, really appreciate you hopping on tonight.
I'm excited to talk shop. I hear we got the NEC on deck. I've been, following along the pod, and I've really enjoyed everything I've heard thus far, and I'm excited to kind of break it down for all the listeners.
Dude, I appreciate it, man. I'm extremely excited to hear your thoughts on some of these guys. Like I said, you've been coaching now for a while, and some of these pups have now turned into some ferocious dogs, and they've certainly we have to dive right into Bryant. I know you've known these two guys. They were, the two freshmen last year for a while. And real quick, before we get into them, I just kind of wanted to go over Bryant's two guys and kind of talk about Bryant real quick. Yeah, they'll be our first team we talk about here in our NEC Breakdown. Bryant, great season last year. They were 9-4. They were 5-2 in the NEC. They were 58% at, facing off as a team last year. Number 20, 19, that 19-20 spot right now in the preseason polls. And, they had a great year last year. They upset St. Joe's to win the NEC last year. Made it to the NCAA tournament. I played UVA in the first round. Everybody thought, UVA was going to roll them, but watching that game, that was a really exciting game. They lost 13-11 to UVA, but I thought really at different points, I thought they were going to win that game. And it certainly started. A big reason of that was because of Jacob Alexander, their freshman faceoff guy. I don't know. Listen, I almost feel like the way the way Nathan Laliberte started out the season, and then he got hurt, and it kind of gave Jacob Alexander to show his stuff out there. It almost kind of worked. Obviously I hate to see Nathan Laliberte get hurt, but it was just an incredible way to kind of see how special of a duo Bryant really had last year. Let's talk about Nathan Laliberte first, because he kind of started out the season as the starter. He was the number one, was red hot to say the least in his first 4 games. He played in 8 of the 13 games. He ended up taking 137 faceoffs. He won 82 of them. He was 60% on the season. Scored 2 goals, one against Tommy Burke at Vermont, which was a really sick goal. It was probably Tommy Burke's second hardest game he had last year. Laliberte ended up being 15-27 against Burke in Vermont that day with a goal. And then he ended up, he mopped Merrimack, mopped Stony Brook. And then he beat up Hobart 16-24. And then he kind of got hurt. And I don't really know what the injury we could talk about the injury in a second here. But Laliberte, I remember hearing about him in high school a little bit. Very high-ranked recruit on all the fancy NLF recruits and inside lacrosse rankings and all that. He was one of the premier 2020 face-off guys, I guess, throughout high school. And, saw him down at the Under Armour games. He's very impressive. And he ended up getting hurt. And we'll talk about Jacob Alexander in a second. But I mean, Nathan Laliberte, everything I saw last year was just he was a human highlight reel those first couple games. I mean, he was really good. What can you tell me about him, Joe? How long have you known him? Walk me through your relationship with Nathan Laliberte.
Yeah, and before we start, he was 60% with, I think, his lone kind of bad game against Zach Cole. I mean, if you take that game out of his stat sheet, he's probably close to a 70% guy.
That was and Alexander struggled mightily in that game as well. But yeah, you're absolutely
right. So, I met Nathan when I started working with the New Hampshire Tomahawks and Chris Cameron probably, 5 or 6 years ago when I really first started coaching at Harvard and started Faceoff Factory. And he was always that kid who's just like a Faceoff rat, always asking for extra reps, always staying after. He could be behind the net with a foot of room before we started, always taking faceoffs, going live, pushing the limits of what was allowed and how much time he got. And like when I first worked with him, what I noticed is he, even at a young age, he was big and strong. He's a man amongst boys. Yeah. And he's got really you ever grab somebody's hand and you shake their hand and they just got like a paw?
Just that man.
He's one of those types of kids with just strong hands. Like Tommy Kelly is a guy like that too. The first time you shake his hand, you're like, holy shit. But what I noticed quickly about him is he's so fast too, and he doesn't go early a lot. He's just really disciplined to the whistle, really good at zoning out and focusing. And he was just, great on his first move, but he bullied everybody when they got.
He's got a hockey background, Joe. I know. It's in his bio. He's got a hockey background, so I feel like that definitely goes into his game too.
Yeah, for sure. And you see that a lot with some of these stronger face-off guys, stockier guys. They have really slick stick skills and pick up the ball well, even in tight spaces. And I routinely find that with the crossover athletes from hockey.
Yeah. So, I mean, what grade was he when I had Corey Bolkin on my last episode, and he did mention, we briefly talked about Bryant, and he said that while he was at Ohio State, they were after him. And he ended up choosing Bryant, but he certainly had, like you said, a lot of different schools after him. So,
no doubt.
I think that's certainly a testament to that head coach over there. I always hear nothing but good things about that guy, but it's certainly impressive how they keep getting all these great players. And he's not a Boston kid, right? Laliberte. He's from
he's from New Hampshire. Yeah.
Auburn, New Hampshire, right? Pinkerton Academy legend, I guess.
He is. And, so what I find with a lot of these New Hampshire kids is they're tough, right? Yeah. They grow up. It's not like Boston where you're in the city. It's not as affluent. It's a little bit more rugged. And I really like that in face-off guys.
He did get hurt. He missed a couple weeks in the middle of the season. And then he had his big time injury kind of after that St. Joe's game. I know he kind of struggled. Both of them kind of struggled with Zach that game, and then he only took 6 faceoffs the following game against like Sacred Heart or something. Yeah, and then he got hurt. I was chatting with him not too long ago. It sounded like he might be ready by the time the season starts. It's getting a little closer. What do you think he'll be back by the beginning of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I could see him playing game one. I know they're not trying to push him whatsoever because they do have the luxury of having Jacob. So I would probably project seeing him, in weeks 3 or 4. Where he gets some of that scrimmage experience in practice. They continue to ramp up his volume. But, coming back from an injury like a contact ACL where it's really nothing you did, you just get put in the wrong position. I think they want to be extremely careful with him. He's got 3 years left of eligibility. As we're kind of alluding to, he's a budding superstar in that conference.
Yeah, no doubt. Nathan Laliberte, So that was their first freshman faceoff guy. This next guy I had never heard of at all until he went in again. Yeah, he had a monster game, whichever game it was. I know he had 30 faceoff wins against LIU. That was 3rd all time. But let's talk about Ocho. I love that the team calls him Ocho. It's great. Let's talk about Jacob Alexander.
So he's another one, he's a 2019. He benefited from that COVID canceled season. So he's a redshirt freshman, technically. And he had a lot of success in high school. He's one of the 2 All-Americans from Massachusetts, him and another student of ours who, Craig Yanoni. Yep. They were kind of like, Jacob was the best kid kind of south of the city. Craig was the best kid north of the city for the public schools and Catholic conferences. He's from Franklin, Mass, which is kind of near Foxborough, and it's a smaller school. It's not as, renowned as some of these ISLs or private schools that play, and you see a lot of kids get recruited from, but he's just a really tough, hard-nosed kid who never complains. And the first time I worked with him, like, he was, exclusively speed moves and always was trying to be first one to the whistle. And I think there's a testament about people who try to push the limits with anticipation. They're getting practice at doing that all the time. And I think he's really mastered that speed game by always trying to be the first one to the ball. And then you fast forward a couple of years as he gets into college, he gets in the Bryant strength program, he's turned into a little monster. And we talked about it earlier. He has a similar build to someone like Petey LaSala, who's short, but super stocky, really quick, really explosive with all his movements. And he's very athletic and fast in the open field. So he's another guy you have to watch out for in transition.
Yeah. I mean, when Laliberte did go down, he was so much fun to watch, Laliberte. And I remember I didn't see the first game live, but I was looking through the box scores. And I see Jacob Alexander with like just a monster game. I think it was against Stony Brook or somebody, but I was like, what? And then I saw it said freshman, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, who is this guy? And I kept my eye on it. And then he just kept getting better and better. He kept getting more opportunities, and he just kept getting better and better and better by the game. And let's talk about Alexander. I mean, so he took 221 faceoffs. He won 128 of them, 75 ground balls. He had 6 goals and 3 assists. He had that ridiculous, I remember that ridiculous Canadian. Like you said earlier, the only game he did struggle mightily in was that one game against St. Joe's back on April 17th. He was 0 for 10. He was 0 for 10 against Zach Cole on April 17th. Fast forward to May 8th in the NEC championship game, Alexander was 17 of 30 for about 57% with a goal and 2 assists.
Right.
So, I mean, talk about a Jekyll and Hyde type situation. Zach absolutely destroyed Bryant back on April 17th. But then Alexander kind of got the revenge in the championship game. So obviously I have I have that St. Joe's circle this year. It's going to be legendary. And I know you've gotten to know Zach really well this past year. So we'll talk about him in a little bit, but what are your, he does have that Petey LaSala kind of build to him. Let's talk about that Virginia game. What he did against Zach Cole in the NEC championship game was certainly very impressive. Not a lot of people thought Bryant was going to. What were your thoughts on what was your thoughts on Jacob Alexander going into that Virginia game?
As you probably do, a lot of our college guys will reach out before the games and ask for what might be a pep talk or have a question or two, and they're really looking for some added confidence. And what I responded to him when he reached out about the matchup is, I'm like, what confidence do you need? You just avenged your biggest loss, showing how much progress you've made this season. That's a tough thing to do as a faceoff guy, is to get through that mental block of someone who beat the shit out of you and then come back and smack them right back in the next matchup. I was like, dude, you're ready to rock. Go out there, do your thing, trust yourself, be ready, be quick on the whistle, and don't second guess anything. And he went in and kind of took it to LaSala from the start. And I don't think, Petey expected to get that much of a battle from him, as Virginia didn't from Bryant in general. And I think what we saw in that game is even guys from some of these lesser known conferences all can compete with the top dogs in the ACC at the faceoff dot. And I think it's who's feeling their best on that day and who's riding the momentum and the consistency that you put in through practice for the whole year. And Jacob's someone who works extremely hard, and I told him to just trust himself, and he certainly did. And when your team's playing like that with a lot of confidence, it's easy to feel like you got it going on.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt, man. I mean, the numbers don't lie. I mean, he was 16 to 27. He was 60% that day. I mean, and he won. I didn't really go back to see how many the first couple he won in a row, but I mean, he was winning them clean. It wasn't like his 16 wins were just like scrums and he ended up. I mean, he was really taking it to him a couple times there. Virginia got out by the skin of their teeth. They ended up winning the whole thing, but that was a game that was an exciting game, and I think that certainly put Jacob Alexander and he's a guy that I know I'm certainly looking forward to watching again this year. I know he's been doing nothing but, working out, training. How did he look? Did you see him at all this, over Christmas break at all?
Yeah, Christmas break. He was like, over Christmas, we're lucky. We have a ton of colleges in the New England area. We probably get 50 or 60 guys coming weekly to our session, and 20 to 25 of them are college kids. And he was top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5
on the post and everything.
Almost every time. Yeah.
I like that.
He's wildly consistent. He does a great job adapting to his opponents. And I think when you have that confidence in yourself to be quick, like you're just at such an advantage. And that's something he does better than a lot of people.
Does he play box up there at all? Or like I feel like the way he plays, he kind of like looks like he plays box. Does he do anything?
I feel like New England has such a hockey like crossover within its lacrosse base of kids that a lot more of them, all these clubs are doing an awesome job of sprinkling in box to all their winter training, and the kids eat it up.
Yeah. He's special, man. I mean, they, like I said, other than that Zach Cole game on April 17th, he was like 2 or 3 under 50% against Hobart. One game he was only 45%, but other than that, I mean, he was lights out, and he's going to be the Bryant duo is going to be must-watch TV. I really feel like they can compete with anybody. I'm looking at their schedule right now. I forgot to write it down, so I was looking it up as you were talking, and I don't know. I wish they were playing a little bit stronger of an out-of-conference schedule. I mean, they really only have Providence, Boston U, Dartmouth, Bellarmine. They play for Tommy Burke in Vermont again. That'll be a good one. But other than that, that's an Air Force, and then they get into the NEC play. So I don't know. I would have loved to see those two guys try to play a couple more ACC or Big Tens, but I don't know. Maybe if I'm a team, I probably wouldn't want to play Bryant this year anyway. I mean, I know
I wouldn't either.
So I would have been nice to see your alma mater have the courage to play them this year. Maybe Rutgers, that would have been a good one.
That would have been a good one. I find that a lot of teams don't like scheduling Bryant midweek. Yeah. And that they seek out those matchups. I know when we were at Harvard, that was not a game that worked out in our favor really ever.
But yeah, I mean, the Bryant duo, I think now that Notre Dame, that duo's gone, got the UNC duo, but I think the Bryant duo, they're going to be a problem these next couple of years. And I feel like they're just going to keep getting better and better and better and better. And I can't wait to see by the time they're seniors, they're going to look like. I mean, it's terrifying to think they still have 3 more years.
I know it's pretty wild. The other sneaky duo I think that might transpire is Blanchard from Hobart transferred to Ohio State. If him and Inacio,
I've been following them. I've been following those scrimmages. I know Inacio's been taking a lot of them, but
I would think that too.
Blanchard's getting in. That'll be interesting. I think also the Maryland duo, you had Gavin Ty and Luke Weirman.
Yeah.
Gavin Ty transferred in from Virginia. He's certainly legit, and I think Maryland's a team that might, may or may not have a 2-headed monster this year. I think a lot of teams should have to. I've been saying it. I don't think one guy should be taking 500-600 faceoffs a season. I just, unless you're LaSala or Inacio, who for some reason their bodies can hold on to that. Like, I just don't think it's smart. Let's talk about St. Joe's. Like I said, Zach Cole's a guy you've gotten to know. You guys sponsored him at the Faceoff Factory this past off season, and he certainly made a name for himself at St. Joe's, to say the least. Just real quick, I can kind of go over some of Zach Cole's stats here. He currently owns the all-time career Faceoff wins record at St. Joe's with 490. He owns the all-time single-season ground ball record. Pretty much any Faceoff record at St. Joe's, Zach Cole owns it. He's a preseason third-team All-American. He earned third-team All-American at the end of last season. I certainly think if he doesn't go back and take his COVID year, I think he could certainly be a PLL face-off prospect. Decide to go be draft eligible. I mean, he's primed for, another monster season. Tell me your thoughts on Zach Cole.
Yeah, how I would compare him to like a lot of other faceoff guys. If you look at like NFL running backs, most of them are like 5'10", 5'11". They're quick, they're stocky. And then there's like Adrian Peterson, who's 6'2", elusive, super light on his feet, and really quick and agile. And I think Zach Cole's kind of like that, right? He's got some size on a lot of his opponents. He still moves really well, and he has like a rare finesse about him, like with his exits, with his ball control, with his decision making, with his transition play. I think he does so many things well outside of just like excelling at clamping the ball. And the one thing that impresses me the most is like, he had the target on his back all year last year.
Always,
kind of like
years now.
Like a Trevor Baptiste, where you go into every game knowing like every team is just going to try to beat the shit out of you and throw everything they got at you, triple pulls, the whole deal. And like, how do you keep changing your strategy? How do you keep it fresh so you're unscoutable? And I think he's done a really good job of staying ahead of his opponents with his planning and like how his team plays the faceoffs.
And, and he doesn't get many breaks either. I mean, he takes a lot of faceoffs. Like you said, I mean, he's built like a football player. I mean, he was a heck of a football player back in his day at Lenape High School in South Jersey. He's a kid who kind of like a Tom Brady type story. I mean, he wasn't very heavily recruited in high school, and that really pissed him off. Some bench player on Lenape who would throw him a pole, and he would throw his faceoff stick onto the sideline, grab the pole, and go play long stick because they needed him. So he's an athletic specimen. St. Joe's, they had a great year last year. They did get upset by Bryant in the NEC championship, but they were 8-0, going into that in the NEC Conference last year. They did lose to Bryant 16-10, but the crazy part was they destroyed Bryant at the Faceoff X, and in general, they beat Bryant 13-5 in the regular season. So it was just like a tale of two different games. In the first game, Zach Cole versus Jacob Alexander. Zach Cole was 20 for 22 with 13 ground balls and a goal. And that wasn't just against Alexander. Laliberte played in that game as well.
Yeah. But
Alexander was 0 for 10. Laliberte, clearly he only won 2 faceoffs. So, he was 2 for 12, Laliberte. So then you go into the second game, the championship. Alexander took them all, and he was 17 of 30. Do you remember that game? Did you watch any of the?
I do. I mean, it was a lot of faceoffs. It was a lot of back and forth. I don't think Zach necessarily played bad. I think like Bryant outplayed them on the wings, and I think they just wanted it a little more.
Alexander also had in that championship game a goal and 2 assists. So like anytime you see like, you just have those stuck in your head. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
if you get scored on, or if you have a couple assists off the faceoff, they just kind of seems like you got beaten even worse. But really, I mean, the numbers were nowhere near as bad as I remember it either when I kind of went back and looked at the numbers. So you're right. I still think he's the guy to beat in the conference. I think I'm curious to see that first game, when they play, and they'll probably play again in the NEC tournament at some point, but I can't wait to kind of see how that first game is going to go. I mean, other than Bryant, he didn't really, he battled the Hobart guys a little bit, but he kind of took care of everybody else. So I think if Zach, like I said, you think Zach has the makings to be a good PLL faceoff guy?
I do, and I don't say it a lot because I think it's going to be becoming more and more rare that these college kids come out, especially with the rule differences, and thrive. But, if you look back at 2019, I think we're talking about a kid who was 75% in his last season on a knee, right? So that's something I look at, and I also just think he has like the physical making to compete with the big dogs in the PLL because, like, I'm 5'10", 205, 210-ish, and I'm like average size, very average size compared to some of these guys throwing their weight around.
I don't want to get too off topic here, but you bring up a good point about going back down to knee down. How many more years do you think until the league is back up off a knee and we're, and everybody's standing, because eventually, as some of these knee down guys in the league get older, right? I mean, I just feel like it's going to have to go back to standing. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know if the league's going to say mandate.
I don't think they'll make them. I just think it'll be like,
I think it's going to happen naturally. I've coached a lot of stand up, and I was finding more success standing than on my knee in the playoffs. Right. Like a couple bad bounces in the championship game that I could have easily been 60%. And with the stand up that I used in the last game of the regular season and throughout the playoffs, I could have been 60. I probably was around, 60, 65% on my feet. I think with the ball placement up high, it's going to continue to get harder to clamp from a knee as guys are getting better and better on their feet.
Yeah. I agree. Well, I'll kind of leave it there with Zach Cole. I mean, as long as he's healthy, he's going to be the option. He's kind of in a similar situation as Gerard Arceri at Penn State was, Justin Inacio. I mean, he's going to take an ungodly amount of faceoffs this year.
Yeah,
as long as he's healthy. I hope they have. It would be nice for one of their backs to kind of come in and take a couple of games just to, so he doesn't burn out by the end. I know Zach Cole wants nothing more than every face-off St. Joe's to the NCAA tournament, which he hasn't been able, St. Joe's has not been able to do that yet. So I really hope they kind of keep him almost on a count early this season, so that, God forbid, he just keep his body fresh. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And if they're as explosive as they were on offense a year ago, you're looking at 30 faceoffs a game. Like, you got to find a way to reduce his workload by 10, 20% by throwing somebody in there for 3 to 6, especially in these games where they're pouring it on and lighting teams up. But, leaving off with Zach, I think the last thing I'll say is he's a 65+% career guy, right? And it's like, that's some serious sustained success.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm looking at their schedule. They got Delaware and State, Monmouth, Drexel. So they got a couple good tests here before they get into the NEC play. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
We're going to take a short little break here, but then coming right up, Joe, you going to stick around a little bit?
Yeah.
We're going to talk a couple of these other guys you coach. All right, so we're back at it here. My guest is Joe Nardella. We're breaking down the NEC Conference. Next team up here is LIU. LIU, 5-3 in the conference last year. They were 6-4 overall. They were 47% on the season facing off. Not too bad. They lost to St. Joe's only by 1 last year. They lost 14-13 on April 24th. Wasn't bad. Bryant, they only lost by 3. They lost 20-17 in 1 regular season game. So, they played a couple of these teams pretty close, but again, I don't know much about LIU. I don't know who they're really bringing back. So we'll see how they do. Let's talk face-off guys here. I know one of these guys. We'll start with junior Emerson Tyler. Don't know much about him. You and I were saying he was from New Hampshire. He was 70 of he took 131 face-offs last year. He won 70 of them, so he was about 53% on the season. 33 ground balls, not bad for a junior. He's a junior this year, I believe. Right? Yeah. What can you tell me about Emerson Tyler?
So, I was just saying he's someone who picked up faceoffs late his junior year. Coach Wolf took the job at LIU, was looking to add depth at the position. And he's someone who's just relentless. Like, he's driving 2 hours from northern New Hampshire to come down to Massachusetts and work with us twice a week. And I saw him get so much better. And I noticed, he's got the hand speed and the strength to compete at this level. So he's someone, he gets a healthy dose of good competition over winter break and in the summers with us up in New England. And I think he's poised for a breakout campaign. And watching a lot of his film from a year ago, I think he clamps the ball really well. I think there's a few things that he needed to tighten up that he really honed in on. And I'm looking forward to him having a pretty big season here. I think he's a guy who's deceptively scrappy, but has really quick hands and can be a threat going forward. And I know they got Justin Joseph as well, who's worked with you. I've seen some film of him just in working with the LIU guys, and he's a strong, powerful clamp guy who I think could also have success in this conference if they position the wings the right way and they really play to his strengths, let him pop the ball to space and have some of their more athletic guys go get it. But LIU does return, one of the top goalies in the country, as well as one of the top offensive players. So I do think they're a sneaky under the radar team that's continuing to get better.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Justin Joseph only took 8 faceoffs last year. He transferred in from Lycoming, a Division III school. I think he was still trying to get his feet under the whole, D1 grind. And, he's done nothing but.
They may be a team who's just thinking a little outside the box in terms of their wing play and their strategy. And if I'm playing them and they're on the schedule, I'd be ready to see the kitchen sink.
When we're talking NEC, we kind of have to compare some of these other teams to Bryant and St. Joe's. And, versus Bryant, they were 11 of 41. Against St. Joe's, they played them twice. They were 7 of 29 in the first game and 10 of 34 in the second game. So,
yikes.
Yeah. So nowhere to go but up there. But they are playing looking at their schedule, they got a pretty decent out-of-conference schedule before they get into NEC play. They actually, I believe, play Rutgers this weekend.
They do. They open with Rutgers. I'm excited for that one.
I'm excited to see Rutgers, too, because, as you know, they have that new transfer in from Mount St. Mary's, and they have Jonathan DiGenio, who transferred in from St. John's as a sophomore last year, and I put together a pretty nice season, I thought.
Yeah, I thought he did a great job despite playing some stiff competition. They have a freshman, another New Hampshire kid, freshman, coming from us, Luke Romanek. I think he's been neck and neck with Mark Steven from Mount St. Mary and Dehenio. So that should be an interesting evolution this weekend as we see who really takes the field and who's going to get the game reps on both sides. For LIU, it looks like you got 3 guys you could really go with. Same with Rutgers. So we'll see what both teams come out with and how the season starts out.
I remember talking about that freshman at Rutgers in my Big Ten breakdown. And I was reading his bio and it said he was like 97% his senior year. I was like, that can't be right. 97, 96 or 97%. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. But I don't know what the competition level was up at New Hampshire, but still, I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, so he's
the
real deal.
Season got cut short. He's good though. He's really good.
Yeah.
He was an Under Armour All New England kid. He's actually someone who worked with Nathan Laliberte a lot. Those two guys get after it together.
Yeah. So Rutgers versus LIU this weekend. That's going to be a good one. They play Quinnipiac, and the Quinnipiac kid pretty well. He's certainly very. Then they got Hofstra, Drexel, UMass. So all teams with really good face-off guys. Before
they have a really tough out-of-conference schedule.
Really
it's like we talk about Brian, and we're like,
it would be nice for Brian to kind of get these kind of out-of-conference games.
Absolutely. So credit to Coach Wolf testing these guys. It should be interesting to see how their face-off group handles it, who kind of takes the lead role there, and what we see transpire between that team. Because when you have a couple options to start the year, it's almost going to be like a trial and error thing. And I find a lot of teams do this when they don't know who the guy is, because scrimmages are scrimmages. When the lights come on and you're playing a real game, things tend to be a little different. People tense up. So I'm excited to see who kind of takes the lead role there.
Yeah, me too, man. Let's kind of move on. LIU, we'll certainly keep an eye on them this upcoming season, especially starting this weekend. I guarantee you'll be seeing those highlights up on the channel this weekend at some point, the LIU Rutgers game. But let's talk about Mount St. Mary's. Mount St. Mary's, they lost their 4-year starter, Sam Steven, to Rutgers.
Sam Steven.
He transferred back to Jersey, where he's from, and he's loving life down there from what I see on Snapchat. Definitely a different world going to New Brunswick than down in the sticks of Maryland. That's a whole nother story. But anyway, so they lost Sam Steven, grabbed the kid from the transfer portal from Canisius last season, Connor Beals, who's a sophomore. He was a freshman, I guess, on Canisius last year. Took 228 faceoffs, Beals did for Canisius last year, won 53%. I do remember watching a couple of his games last year. Is he a guy that you know at all? Do you know Connor Beals?
No, I do not. And I haven't watched a ton of Kanisha's film. So you caught me on one. But
Yeah, he's great hair,
53%.
crazy long hair. Put together a couple nice games for Canisius last year. I mean, he was good. So I think, he transferred in. So, and they also have another faceoff guy on the roster, Cooper Leonard from North Carolina, only played in 2 games last year. I think I've talked with Peyton Smith about him before. Peyton Smith has talked about him before. Works with a bunch of guys down in North Carolina, and he always has nothing but good things to say about him. We'll see. I'm sure he'll get some opportunities this year. But Mount St. Mary's is another team with a pretty solid out-of-conference schedule. They're playing Navy, Delaware, Towson, and Georgetown.
Right.
So I don't get it. I don't know why some of these teams have such good out-of-conference schedules, and then you look at Bryant and St. Joe's, and it's like,
yeah, who do they really got? And I don't think there's any harm in challenging your team like that, right? And we're talking NEC, realistically, like the only way to ever get an at-large bid out of that conference is going to be to play a tough out-of-season or out-of-conference schedule. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, in Mount St. Mary's, they always have some sneaky, like, kind of big upsets. I mean, they beat Delaware in the first game of the season last year, which was a huge win. And then they lost 8 straight after that. Yeah, but the year before that, I remember they played Hopkins in a close game. So, you can't ever count out the Mount. So, you got anything else on Mount St. Mary's?
No, I'm excited to see him go at it with some of these guys, though. I remember when I was younger in high school, they made the NCAA tournament. They had one of the leading goal scorers in the country, and they were a fun team to watch.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe the Mount will reload this year. We'll keep an eye on them. Let's talk about Hobart. Hobart, they were 6-2 in the conference last year, 6-3 overall. Ended up losing to Bryant in the NEC championship game. We talked a little bit about with their faceoff guy who's now at Ohio State, Drew Blanchard. Yeah, what do you know about Drew Blanchard? Who's now at Ohio State. We'll talk about him in a second. But what can you tell me about Drew Blanchard?
Blanchard's another one, extremely fast hands, but he's just like such a savvy ground ball guy, and he's a multi-sport athlete in high school. He's one of those guys who he's like, I don't want to be a faceoff guy. I want to play midfield in college. And I think he probably would have gotten more highly recruited had he, really just dedicated his time to facing off earlier on. But similar to me in that sense, where I told coaches that I didn't want to go there if they wanted me to be just a fogo. He's someone who's thrived at it at the next level. And I think his counterpart from a year ago, Adam Shea, is also a really good faceoff guy. And
he's quick.
I've seen him play. He's quick. He's had some great games in that NEC conference. Hobart had an awesome team faceoff percentage. So it wasn't just Blanchard. Like Shea did an awesome job a year ago too. And I look forward to seeing him take like the lead role and what Hobart's going to look like with him being the primary versus someone he might be splitting reps with, because, some of these duo situations work out like Bryant, where these two happen to be really close and they're boys, but other ones one guy's looking over his shoulder, wondering if he loses one faceoff, is he getting yanked?
Yeah. Shea started out as the starter at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and
he was in the top 10 faceoff percentage for a while, and I struggled a game or two, and Blanchard just got a couple opportunities, and then seemed like he kept getting more and more, and then he was the flat. I don't know for sure if Adam Shea got hurt or not, but
yeah,
Blanchard, I mean, he earned it. I mean, he kept getting better and better, and then he kind of saved his best games for the end of the season. And I went back and watched that Bryant game in the NEC tournament, and he was 15-25. Blanchard had a great battle with Alexander that day. I mean, they both should have had a couple goals in that game. Blanchard ended up a game or two before that when he played St. Joe's. He was 13-23 against Zach Cole. So that's pretty impressive. It's
really good game.
I don't care what, I mean, he did really well. Yeah, he took 110. He took 110 faceoffs. He won 72 of them, so it was 65% on the season. He played for all 4 years at Hobart, and now he took that COVID year, and he's in the Big Ten now. He's playing for Ohio State. So I'm very excited to see him, in a Big Ten uniform now. I can't wait to see it. I'm sure he's chomping at the bit to, kind of prove himself. Yeah. So they have, as far as Hobart this upcoming season, Adam Shea, He took 128 faceoffs last year. He won 81 of them. He was says about 63% on the season. I think we're going to see a heavy dose of Adam Shea this year. Like you said, they have two other guys on the roster. Ryan Dixon, he's a Philly guy, bigger guy. He's 6'3", 210. Good basketball player back in his day. I mean, I think you throw him in, he's a totally different kind of style of play than Adam Shea, who's a freshman this upcoming season. So I don't know. I mean, if I'm a betting man, I think we'll see Shea coming right out of the gate. But Hobart's a team that another great listen to this out of conference schedule. They got Yale, Fairfield, Lehigh, Cornell, Colgate, and Syracuse.
Right, like that's awesome. That's
awesome teams. But then you look at it from a face-off standpoint, it's like, man, every one of these teams has like a guy or multiple guys that are really good.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm interested to see from Adam Shea is if he could take the next step to from being like that speed guy to competing with a lot of these power guys like the Sisselbergers and Zach Cole and the Bryant guys. And I think if he can neutralize some of those matchups and go right around 50-50, when he gets his games where he's got the clear upper hand, we could see him in the 65% range.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm curious to see it too.
Shea's always been good, even from high school. He was skinny back then, but I remember he came to like our fall championship event and won the whole thing. And I was like, who the hell is this kid?
We'll see how Hobart does. My old man went to Hobart, so I'm always following the Statesman. So
yeah,
I'll be certainly watching. So let's finish off with a couple of these other teams here. Let's talk Wagner. They were, Wagner's a team with nowhere to go but up. They were 1-9 last season, 38% facing off as a team. They got two guys from Philly who I'm big fans of. They Matt Reuter, a junior. He was 45 of 109 last season with 15 ground balls. I think Reuter kind of was one of those like really good knee down. Both these guys actually were really down guys that I feel like have just taken a little bit longer to kind of adjust to the new rules, develop a little bit stronger stick skills. I think having last season was a huge kind of learning experience for them. They got Reuter, who's a junior this upcoming season, and then they have Bobby Blewett, a sophomore from the Haverford School in Philly.
Yeah, I like his game.
Yeah, I called him the disruptor. I mean, if he doesn't beat you on the clamp, I mean, he's got a whole arsenal of ways that, to disrupt you. He's a good athlete. I mean, he's he's swimming right now for the Wagner team. I mean,
wow.
Yeah, he was such a good knee down guy, and he's battled some injuries through the years, and he's not a guy that's ready to throw in the towel by any means. I mean, he's just hungrier, and he just keeps getting hungrier and hungrier. So I'm really looking forward to watching those guys. They have Ryan Wepley as well on the roster, who took 47 faceoffs last year. It says he was 10 of 13 against St. Joe's last year. So that's kind of his claim to fame. That's very impressive.
That is.
I don't remember that at all, but
no.
To Ryan Wepley, we'll see what he can do this year.
We'd have to double check and fact check that on
the
St. Joe's site, see if they pulled Zach.
Maybe. They're playing Fairfield, they're playing Monmouth, they're playing Mercer. I love the Mercer kid, Ashton Wood. Did you see the highlights?
I like Wood.
Oh, he's a star.
I thought he was good a year ago. He was pretty up there in percentage for a bit.
He was. He's the guy's you want to talk menace. I mean, he's got speed. He's strong. I think if you took that Mercer jersey off him and ACC or a Big Ten one on, I don't think he'd skip a beat. I think he'd still be pretty successful.
It's wild that some of these smaller schools find great guys too, just diamonds in the rough, kids with the right attitude.
I think we got one more team to talk about here. Let's get into. Oh no, we got two. Let's talk Merrimack. Merrimack.
I like this one.
Here, 4-4 in the conference. 45% at facing off last season. Only lost by 1 to Bryant on March 27th. Actually, they were 12 of 20 that game against Bryant, believe it or not. That was kind of one of Merrimack's best games facing off. They had a kid from Wisconsin, a freshman last season, Carl Sutter, facing off for them. Again, he was 1 over 50% against Bryant, 6 of 12 against Hobart. So I don't remember that Merrimack too much last season. I mean, Carl Sutter, he took 132 faceoffs, won 70 of them. I mean, that's pretty good for a freshman.
So, I mean, all the Merrimack kids, they're relatively close to Boston, too. They all come to our trainings, and they had, their starter, Alan French, who had a pretty good freshman year. He might have been the one who played in that Bryant game. I don't know if it has Sutter down there or not, as you're looking at the stats. But Alan French, started as a true freshman. He was a football kid in high school, really strong, stocky build, and he's gotten quicker and much better technique-wise. He's cleared from his ACL. Him and Nathan did him about a week apart, and they've kind of been doing their reps during our sessions, like off to the side together, and kind of just on the rehab train.
Did French play last season? I looked.
I think he did. Maybe he got hurt in the first or second game, but he's someone to keep your eye on. I think he's strong enough to compete with these big dogs in this conference. And I think if he comes back and he's healthy, he'll be the starter. But Sutter's like kind of a raw, quick hands guy that can disrupt as well. And it's no surprise 70 something for 132-ish. Like, that's pretty good for a freshman, especially someone
from Wisconsin. It's not like he's got a lot of things
he's a guy
to practice with out there. No offense. I mean, they got that stud from Jacksonville, that mammoth of a man, Nathan Kapp. He's from Wisconsin.
Yep.
Other than that, I don't really know anybody from Wisconsin.
Yeah, but those kids out there, the Midwest boys, they recruit football kids from places like that for a reason. Yeah.
So Merrimack, we'll see. I mean, they play Hofstra this weekend. Huge test. They got Brian Herber, and they even, Chase Patterson, their backup, is no slouch either. So they got Hofstra this weekend, and they got Boston U, Dartmouth, Holy Cross as out of conference. So we'll see. Merrimack, until they, kind of stick it to St. Joe's or Bryant this year. I mean,
what do we got?
I kind of predict they're going to be in that middle of the pack again this season until I see otherwise. But we'll see. And like you said about Alan French, when he coming off this ACL injury, we'll see what he's got. Yeah,
and Sutter could be a great guy to keep him on a pitch count if those two can be a little dynamic and throw different stuff at teams. Maybe they keep some of these teams on their toes a little bit.
They got Matt Lucasi from Massachusetts, a sophomore on the roster.
Yeah, he also trains with us as well. He's been a long-time student. He's someone who's gotten significantly better even since, fall and winter break. So I could see him maybe cracking the lineup and getting some time as well.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see on Merrimack. Let's get into Sacred Heart. Sacred Heart, another team, nowhere to go but way up. 1-12 on the season, 0-8 in the conference, 39% facing off last season. They had I didn't even write down what grade he's in, but I believe he's a senior this year, Tristan Dowd. He took 176 faceoffs last year, 176 of them. So he's a little under 50, 43%. Connor Callahan they have on the roster from Texas.
Yeah.
Texas, 41 of 93, 10 ground balls. Not bad. He only played in 4 games. Dowd played in 11 games. But again, the bulk, where they struggled the most was Bryant and St. Joe's. They were 13 of 30 against Bryant and 3 of 18 against Hobart. I didn't even write down what they were against St. I don't know if they even played St. Joe's last year, but that game might have gotten canceled or something. But I don't know much about Sacred Heart. You know anything about that?
Yeah, so Callahan, I think, is a little smaller. He's more of like a speed guy. He tries to get the ball quickly and get out. I think if he can do a better job getting the ball further out to space, he'll be better off. And I think Dowd's more of like a disruptor. He's Casey Dowd's younger brother who's had pro experience, was a standout at Siena. He transferred from Stony Brook. So maybe like what I'm thinking is if those two can take a little bit of each other's stuff, they could be really good. So if Dowd gets a little bit better with his speed and his clamps and his consistency, he might be great. And if Callahan can do a little bit better job of countering some of these guys and taking some stuff he learns from Dowd, I think they could get to 50%. I don't think that's wild, but you got to stop the bleeding in some of those big matchups. Like a 3 for 18 kills your team percentage.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, isn't Tommy Kelly the faceoff coach for Sacred Heart this year? Is that
Stony Brook?
Stony Brook. Okay, so
yes.
Yeah, we'll see. I didn't make that connection with Tristan Dowd and your boy Casey Dowd. But yeah, I would hopefully hopefully they make that step up this year. They make that jump up and, like you said, get back to 50%. So that's all I got. That's all I got on the NEC Conference, Joe. I mean, let's talk real quick about what games are you excited to watch this upcoming weekend?
Yeah, I think Rutgers LIU will be a really good one. LIU's got some firepower on offense. I would hope that Rutgers can, outshoot them and play a little bit more disciplined on the defensive side of the ball. The faceoff should be really interesting to see. Kind of like we talked about, who out of the 3 guys on each of those squads step up and take that lead role. I am excited for Duke Robert Morris. I think Robert Morris features a ton of Canadians, and they always give teams a tough time who don't play them a lot. You see, they always have that 1 or 2 out of conference games a year where they make a run at one of these big teams. And Duke's always on upset alert in February, so I could see that shaking out to be an interesting one.
Yeah, I'm looking on lacrossebucket.com here. They do a great job kind of posting all the schedules. And you got Maryland High Point, you got Virginia Air Force, Ohio State's opening up against Detroit Mercy. I don't know who Detroit Mercy's guy is this year. I know they lost that like 3 or 4 year starter with the crazy last name, that Jabrowski, or remember, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, he was actually solid.
He was good. Then they got Hopkins, Jacksonville. That'll be good, I think.
Yeah, I look forward to that one.
That could be a good matchup. Penn State, Lafayette, like you said, Rutgers, LIU, Michigan, Bellarmine. Listen, I heard Michigan went up to Syracuse last weekend, and it kind of took it to the orange.
Really?
Yeah.
I can see Michigan being one of our more improved teams this year. I think they're doing a really good job out there.
Yeah, Faceoffs were about even, but I as a team, I heard Michigan did pretty well. So I can't wait to watch Michigan this year. I think they're going to be like, I'm not saying they're going to be like Maryland good, but they're going to be better.
Yeah, I'd love to see them be competitive in the Big Ten where they get 2 or 3 wins. I don't think they've ever been a 3-win team in conference play.
You're probably right. Probably never, but we'll see.
I do think that Maryland High Point game has some excitement behind it. It could be a good one. Yeah. I would imagine Maryland will control the dot, though.
Well, I mean, they don't have. I mean, Luke Weirman, he got a lot of time. He got a lot of experience at the end of last. Yeah, he did get a lot of experience last season. You got Gavin Ty, who's a little untested still, but Colin Hoban at High Point is pretty legit. They did lose that other senior, but Hoban's no joke. They got a couple other guys. I would, if I was a betting man, I would predict that Maryland should have the upper hand at facing off. But
yeah, who knows? You never know when the gloves come.
You really never know. That's about it. I mean, as far as the games in the first week, hopefully this. I know the weather's crazy. I really hope that the Duke Vermont game happens on Sunday.
I think that's a great one.
What are your thoughts on Tommy Burke? Were you able to watch him at all last season?
Yeah, I've watched a lot of Tommy Burke. I think he does an awesome job. He's a big body that is great with his exits and his placement, and he's obviously really quick on the whistle. However, I think Naso is going to pose a matchup threat. He's a totally different style. It's totally complete different. Polar opposites, like a big, strong, physical, fast guy versus a low, stocky, super good ground ball guy with also quick hands. I think, just from how they grip the stick, they both face off so differently. So it's going to be a great contrast to kind of see how different styles play out.
Oh, it's going to be awesome. Yeah. I know Vermont, they want this game real bad. They want, and especially Tommy Burke. I mean, as we all know, the guy is just a total face-off fanatic. I mean, he just, he's very fired up for this game, as he should be. So that will certainly, I forget what time that game is on Sunday, but that will certainly be must watch.
100%. I think that could be your early season matchup of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's going on with you? I know, listen, for everybody out there, you can follow Joe on his Instagram. You can, follow Faceoff Factory on Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff as well. Where are you playing? He also plays for the Albany Firewolves now, right?
Correct.
Who do you guys got this weekend?
So we have a doubleheader. We play home and home, which means we play at Georgia tomorrow. And then we're all flying Saturday and playing a 7:00 game Saturday night in Albany against Georgia again. So we're currently 3-2. We've won the last 3. This is another weekend. Huge opportunity to continue to build momentum. If you guys haven't, make sure you check out Faceoff Zone on YouTube. They're doing an awesome job covering our games and showing you guys the differences in the box game. And I think despite, a lot of the box guys facing off knee down, what every outdoor player can learn from watching some indoor is how to pop the ball and control it in tight space, how to use your teammates and to strategize. And I think given that in box, the guys are allowed to release from their restraining line right away. It's a true 5-on-5. So you really got to be careful about where you place that ball. So I think if you watch and you see how teams set up, whether it's 3 guys on the offensive or defensive end, you'll get a real good feel for tendencies and where guys are trying to pop the ball. I think all that stuff's really interesting to watch. And there's a ton of young talent at the Faceoff dot coming into this league.
Yeah. Oh, big time. That matchup versus Baptiste a couple weeks ago was awesome. I know you just recently battled Withers the other day, so you can certainly stay tuned for more face-off highlights of the NLL coming, especially as we get closer to playoff time. But yeah, listen, man, I really appreciate you hopping on. You and I kind of have known each other now for a little bit, and thanks. And I really appreciate you hopping on tonight.
Yeah, anytime, man. You want to break down anything else the rest of the season? I'm your guy.
Oh, I
always love talking shop. Keep me posted.
It's gonna be
hopefully I'll be a repeat customer on the pod.
It's gonna be a fun season, man. It's gonna be a fun season. So that's going to do it for our NEC Breakdown. Again, I want to thank my guest, Joe Nardella, for coming on today. That was a lot of fun. Hope everybody has a great time with opening day tomorrow. A lot of fun lacrosse games on TV, so please make sure you check them out. If you do miss a game, don't you worry. You can catch the full game face-off highlights from all of these games on my YouTube channel. So make sure you check it out next week. Give it a subscribe. You can also follow me on Instagram at FO_zone for some fun breakdowns as well. And listen, I'll be around all season long talking face-off. So until next time, I will see you in the zone.